the Niger Delta with and Q Briggs. You don't need to be told that today is the new democracy day as far as government is concerned. But I think to the people of Nigeria and to the people that fought extensively for true democracy to be established in Nigeria, the people that died in the process, people like MKO Abiola, people like so many people that lost their lives in the process. The soldiers will call them unknown soldiers. So many people that lost their lives and property in the process of establishing democracy, taking our powers back from the soldiers. Today is the day that federal government of Buhari decided to make it official that June 12th, as it relates to what happened in the election of Abiola and the cancellation of the election by Babangida, and the story goes on and on. Today, Nigerians are celebrating, and we hear that there are people that have come from outside Nigeria to join in the celebration of democracy. Some of them are really not democratic, even in their own countries. People like the president of Venezuela, and so many other people that abuse the idea, the ideology, the rights of democracy, even in their own country. So today people reflected to Abiola, many people reflected to that election. Now, what is democracy? Democracy, as defined and accepted in layman's term, is the form of government by the people where the power is vested in the people and exercised directly. That is through the people that we have elected, that the people elect to represent us, the people. The elections will have to be under a free system for us to accept that it was a democratic process. A country is democratic when freedom is embedded in the institutions that uphold that country. Now, is freedom embedded in the institutions that uphold the country Nigeria? And is the country Nigeria actually upheld? Prosperity, security, and comfort. Are we provided with this in Nigeria? The answer is no. Democracy protects and promotes the rights and interests and welfare of we the people that are governed by the powers that we have given to a few that we have supposedly voted for. Is that the case in Nigeria today? The answer is no. Democracy is supposed to guarantee the rights and freedom of the people to participate in their own governance. The question is, today in Nigeria, are Nigerians participants in their own governance? The answer is no. We the people, therefore, have to know that any democratic government in Nigeria is only legitimate in as much as if we the people have given them the right to govern. Now, the legitimacy of any government from top to bottom and bottom to top, that is from presidency all the way to the councillor in the local government, in the wards, and from there up to the presidency, can only come to be solely and only from us, you and I, meaning that we have the overall control of government. Do we have the overall control of government? No, we don't. Now, government officials must obey the law like you and I. Are they obeying the law like you and I? No. if this is democracy, as I have highlighted briefly, then Nigeria is not practicing democracy in 2019. So we have to look at what we must do as a people to bring ourselves back into the democratic process in Nigeria today, 2019. And if we are actually prepared, we cannot bring ourselves to democracy if we are not prepared to stand up for the rights of the people to practice and to have a democratic government in Nigeria. Now, we need to ask ourselves and answer these questions for ourselves. And it is the answer we will give ourselves, that the people we have elected into the places of political power and authority that we have given to them to do what we want them to do. If a government says it is fighting corruption, and really this corruption is targeted at a particular set of people outside of the circle of the people who say they are fighting corruption, then it becomes autocratic. It becomes a government that is run by a few for a few, and not a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. For Nigeria to actually be a democratic nation, which today it is not. It is only a democratic nation by utterances. Nigeria must, in all its coloration, very quickly accept that it has to practice federalism. Now, for Nigeria to practice federalism, you and I have to insist that the government, any government that is at federal level, actually practice federalism. Now, for us to practice federalism, we have to restructure Nigeria. And I recall that maybe a few years back, I have also made a statement that it is rather late for restructuring. This is not confusing, because if we are calling for restructuring, it doesn't really make sense to also say that it is late for restructuring. But it has become necessary to be seen to be taking that position, because one means it and believes it, and two, that it is actually too late because there are people in government who are resisting the restructuring of Nigeria. And these people claim that the majority of Nigerians have put them there. So if we believe that for Nigeria to stay together as a country, which most Nigerians ordinarily seem to want, then it means that we have to restructure Nigeria. Now, if there are people who are standing against restructuring of Nigeria, then it also makes sense to say that it is too late to restructure Nigeria, because the call to restructure Nigeria now becomes just a repetition of a sentence or a desire. I remember when I first came back home after traveling for so many years after the Civil War in 1998. When I came back, what we had was a call for a sovereign national conference, and that went on for a very long time. I reference it because I came back home in 1998, and I joined that call. In those days, people like the late Toronto Douglas, Afenifere, Nadeko, so many other activists, Obas, the late Oba, so many other activists were also calling for a sovereign national conference. I came back finally home physically at the tail end of Abacha's era, but I was home fully on ground 97, 98, but I came into activism and became active in 1998 before the death of Abacha. And so the resistance to IBB, the resistance to Abacha, I came to meet that, and then Abacha died, and Abdul Salami took over. Obasanjo came out of jail, was brought out of jail, and became the president. We all know these historical facts. Now, from calling for a sovereign national conference, we ended up with a national conference of 2014, as called for by President Goodluck Jonathan. And the report of that national conference, as opposed to a sovereign national conference, did not allow the conference to discuss a particular item, which was whether Nigeria should stay together or not stay together, but we were allowed to discuss every other thing. Well, I mean, it brought us to a point where everything we are asking for, we were able to discuss it, to project it. Some were thrown out, some were not. But basically, we ended up with a situation where if we are to achieve the report, what was suggested by the conference to Nigerians and the government of Nigeria, then what would have happened would have been, we would have had basically a new constitution, because every point in time where we got to a place that needed the input of the National Assembly, it meant that if those areas were supposed to be changed, then the National Assembly would have to agree to it. So basically, if you got to that point in the Constitution, you will have to change the Constitution for you to achieve that. So if we are able to work with the 2014 National Conference report, we will end up with a new constitution, which is really what restructuring of Nigeria will be about. You will change the constitution in so many areas before you can restructure Nigeria. What is not in doubt, as far as we're concerned as a people, and what should not be in doubt, is the desire that we should have a real system of government that we claim that we are, which is a federation. And if we are a federation, then we should be able to control our resources, we should be able to make our own decisions, we should be able to decide what type of education our children have in our different states. We should not actually have a curriculum that favors a particular religion or a particular area of Nigeria. We should not have a situation where some resources are regarded as owned by federal government, and other resources are regarded as owned by entrepreneurs, and therefore if you have a situation where it is illegal for anybody to get involved in refining crude oil to petrol or kerosene or whatever in places like the Niger Delta, the oil producing states, and yet it is entrepreneurship for people to mine gold in Kaduna or anywhere else they find any other resources that is not oil and gas. If we restructure Nigeria, we will not have a situation, nor will we be interested in the argument and the opposition to a situation where a particular set of people from a particular area of Nigeria, of a particular religion, are heading all the areas of power, political power, security, development, and making the final decisions, to the exclusion of all other peoples that make up the country Nigeria. Now, these are all the things that democracy is supposed to provide. Everybody is supposed to be equal in a democratic process, in a democratic government, in a place where democracy is practiced the way it ought to be practiced. We should not have. It is sensational and actually horrifying that if what happened yesterday actually took place, which is to say that in the process of choosing a Senate president, in the process of choosing a deputy Senate president, a speaker, a deputy speaker, that it was glaring that some people were being rewarded for actually working against the tenets of democracy in Nigeria, i.e., people were a particular political party to the detriment of the country and the people of Nigeria. That votes are being bought to the extent that what looks like an ATM card was being released, and money is exchanging, not even hands anymore, going through official system where people are paid for voting. This is not a democracy. This is not a democratic National Assembly where, whether you are in the minority or not, we all have representation. That you cannot vote for who you want in that process of representation to the benefit of the people that have elected you to represent them in the National Assembly and in the process of lawmaking. Our security does not exist. We don't have security. We don't have national security in Nigeria. Foreigners have invaded Nigeria and have taken over literally Nigeria, and whether we like it or not, in the Niger Delta and in the southern part of Nigeria, but let me speak for Niger Delta. And again, I want to use this opportunity to call on not just the electorate, not just the people of the Niger Delta, particularly Rivers State, but the politicians that today have been elected into offices, from governors all the way down to a local government, that are supposed to represent us, the people, not to think that we are isolated, or can be isolated, or will be isolated from the threat that is not only a national threat, it's an international threat. It's a threat that other countries in Africa, the world is beginning to accept that what is happening in the northeast and in the north actually, where people have invaded Nigeria through the porous borders, and in places like Mali they are having the same problem. In along the West Africa coast they are having the same problem. It would be foolish of us down here in the Niger Delta, with the type of resources we have, with the access we have to the ocean, to the 200 or so nautical miles of the Atlantic Ocean, that without us Nigeria cannot claim access to. We should not fool ourselves that we are safe or insulated from this attack that seems to target particular people for specific reason, economic reason, religious reason, land, water. There is so many things that is playing, and it's now playing out in Africa. And we are seeing very clearly the involvement of external countries that claim to be affiliated to Nigeria through culture and religion. And therefore, because we are part of Nigeria, we are not necessarily of the same culture and religion, but we're going to be affected by the activities of this. I mean, some people color it with bandits and insurgency and all of that. The threat is far heavier than that. And it will be foolish, as I said, for you and I, as ordinary citizens who are not wielding political powers, because we have given it to our representatives to exercise on our behalf. They should be, look, our governors, our senators should be able to assure you and I, when we are seriously concerned of these attacks, of these people who want our land because of grass, who want our water, and who are after this area because of its nature of where God has placed us. We have to be very sincere with ourselves as Nigerians and as Niger Delta people. We have a right to express concern, and we have a right to expect the federal government to alleviate, to assure and continuously reassure us when we express these concerns, and not see us as troublemakers, and not see us as unpatriotic for expressing concern for our rights to our resources and our lands and our rights to development. It is our responsibility, you and I, to demand that our representatives, governors, senators, House of Reps, lawmakers, and our right to our own, what we choose is our fate. All of these things are playing out in Nigeria, and it is foolish to pretend that if you don't discuss it, or if you don't raise it as an issue, that it will go away. It is foolish to pretend that if you raise it, you're not a good Nigerian. You are a good Nigerian if you raise it. You're not a good Nigerian if you actually don't raise it. And in any case, I don't see how you can be a good Nigerian if you're first of all not a good Ibibio man, if you're first of all not a good thief man, or a good Urobo man, or a good Ijo man, or Ikwere man, or Ogoni man. You have to be able to raise these issues because they are happening in our country. If we all agree that we belong to Nigeria, it is happening in our country. And the most important thing today in Nigeria is the issue of restructuring Nigeria. There is no way anymore that I can be convinced that there will be a man, even if he comes from Abonima, which is where I come from, that he will go and become the president of Nigeria and that he will be able to answer to all the demands of every other ethnic nationality in Nigeria. It is not possible. It is not possible. Therefore, what is possible is that we are able to take responsibility in little pockets of what we have today. Let us work with what we have today. We have states today. Let us be responsible for our states. Let us start with that, because that is what we have in the Constitution. Let us start with our states and let the states make the decisions for themselves as to what type of education they want, what type of working hours they want, what is good for their state, how they want to develop their states, what will they use to develop their states. That there are states who are every month waiting for resources that will come from Rivers State and Bayelsa State before they can pay their salary. It's ridiculous. While we, Rivers and Bayelsa people, are also waiting for the same resources for us to develop. It becomes unfair, because then it means people are eating or taking from what they have not. You're reaping what you have not sown. That's just the bottom line of the reality of it. Everybody, you can't go and marry and begin to have children just because somebody says you are of age to marry, when you have no means of sustaining yourself, your wife, your children. You can't pay your rent. You cannot pay medical bills. You cannot pay school fees. And yet you're giving birth to children. Who's going to educate them for you? So the essence of creating so many states and so many local governments that is so imbalanced, where the North has 19 states, the South has 17, where Kano has 44 local government areas and Bayelsa has 8. And therefore, when it comes to sharing, Kano will take 44 and Bayelsa will take 8. It's unfair and unjust. And if we continue to say that if we discuss it as to how we can change it, look, Kano can have 400 local government for all I care. But Kano must be able to sustain those local governments from Kano and from what Kano is producing. You can't have 44 local government knowing fully well that what you're going to use to sustain those 44 local government is going to come from Bayelsa State. It's going to come from the tax and the revenue from alcohol that is drunk in Lagos State. And yet you ban alcohol in Kano State. And there is no revenue from alcohol in Kano State. And yet Kano is taking revenue that is coming from alcohol in another state. No. So these are the reasons why we're saying let us restructure Nigeria. And these are the reasons. The insecurity is why we're saying let us have state police. To say that because there is a fear that a state governor will use the powers of a state police to pursue its opponent. It's already happening right now anyway, so that is not the point. The point is, if you make a new law And that's why we must change the constitution. If you make a new law, then you put things in place that will sustain that law to the benefit of everybody. So there must be, if you have state police, there must have rules and regulation. It doesn't make sense to have a DPO in Okrika that does not speak Okrika language or Boni language or Ikure language. And so if he's supposed to curtail crime in Ndele, for instance, and he doesn't speak Ikure, people can be planning how they will go and kidnap people on East-West Road and rob a bank or anywhere. And he will not know what they are talking about because he's not speaking their language. So the issue of what do they call this thing? Federal character doesn't work here. You cannot use federal character and come and police Abonima with federal character when there's the boys, the criminals or whoever is going to be speaking one language. And the policeman who is supposed to stop the crime, they are planning it in front of him because he doesn't speak the language, he doesn't know. And then you say if you give those powers to Rivers State to appoint a DPO that is from Abonima, for instance, if you have a DPO from Akukuto local government area, we all speak the same language. So if he's from Akukuto local government area, he will live there. For instance, he will be comfortable there. His home is there. So he has every reason to go the extra mile to protect himself. It's himself he's even protecting. To protect himself and his own local government, because anything that goes wrong there is also affecting him. So these are the reasons why we are asking for these things. You cannot, Europe is there. You cannot bring a French policeman to come and police the UK, for instance. So the reality, therefore, that we have today in these are all the things that democracy should provide: the convenience of governance and the security that allows us to go to bed, sleep well, wake up, and go and find our daily bread. On that, I will open the lines and we will discuss how we're going to move forward on this democratic to ensure democracy in Nigeria, because Nigeria is not democratic right now. 081 88 58 8155 0809 289 5620. Those are the lines, and we've opened the lines, and we're talking about whether Nigeria is really a democratic country and what our responsibilities are to ensure that we have a democratic government in Nigeria, and why we must insist that we are owed that responsibility by the people that we have put in place to exercise our powers. But like right now, we do not have a democratic process in Nigeria. Well, it's hello. Okay, it seems like hello. Are we on air? All right. Well, I mean, definitely, I think. Hello.
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 Hello. Good morning, madam.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
What's your name and where are you calling from? Okay, and okay, go ahead.
Actually, what you said is the correct thing. The so-called elected senators, House of Reps, they are not helping issues. Because exactly from the list you presented now, that man cannot say half for certain local government, while Rivers has 8.
No, Bayelsa.
Where are the losses coming from?
Bayelsa has 8.
From Bayelsa,
Yes.
Yes, but I have it.
Yes.
So where is the resources coming from?
Yeah.
The whole things, the whole budget, everything. Where grounds on oil. And where is that oil? Where those people on that oil area are getting nothing. And our representatives only go here just for their own selfish interest. They don't even care whether the people they are representing, if they are enjoying their benefits or not. They don't care. They only go to that place and get their own and forget about it. During the elections, when they contested for elections, they will only have their phone numbers open for everybody to get in touch with them. But immediately they win the election and go in there, that number will go off. You will not get it again.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello? Okay. All right. Well, that is, I think that what we should do, what I believe we should do, is that we really and truly must hold our politicians accountable to us at this level. I keep saying it over and over again. We are prepared to work with our politicians so that we get what is right. And no politician, no governor, no senator that is representing this the Niger Delta, what is referred to as the South, but I prefer Niger Delta. What they must speak, what we are asking them to speak. We want to restructure Nigeria. Now, if we know that there are people who will resist restructuring of Nigeria, then we should call for a referendum. It is good that the past president Obasanjo his voice is being heard now, and he's saying some very strong things today. But he knew this thing. He cannot say that. He cannot say that he woke up last year or this year and realized the things that he's saying now. He knew them all along. It was during his government that the insistence for Sharia law to be allowed to take place in some northern states, and eventually in all the demand was made that Sharia law should, the government should allow Sharia law. Hello? Hello, yes, good morning. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Please speak up. We're not hearing you. Speak up, please. From Delta State. Okay, go ahead. Can we hear you? Wait, sir, we're not hearing you at all. Can you speak up? Well, it's a pity because I don't know that we can be heard in Delta State, but maybe he's from Delta State. But it would be nice to have him back. Anyway, so we must have representatives that are willing to do what we are saying. We want certain things done, and those things must be done and achieved on our behalf by them. If they are not going to do it, we will hold them accountable. We will hold them accountable, because there is no reason why governors should not insist on restructuring of this country. There is no reason why they should not insist on restructuring. Obasanjo was there when the call for Sharia law was allowed. It is unconstitutional, but he allowed it. And today, see where we are. So the fact that he's speaking up today, when people say, "Oh, don't criticize Obasanjo, take the message that he's carrying." No, I mean, first and foremost, he has to accept and know that where we are today in Nigeria, he cannot wash his hands off of it. He is part of the blame. He's part of the blame. Even the issue of the Niger Delta, so-called Niger Delta Development Commission, it is not a development commission. It is an agency that is supposed to bridge the gap between government and the necessities that the Niger Delta people are asking for. So to call it a developmental agency is wrong. In any case, it was him also that withheld the funds for the Niger Delta Development Commission. It was the government that is still his government that created the NDDC and also made it difficult for the people to benefit from the process of the NDDC. If NDDC is Niger Delta Development Commission, what are people who are not from Niger Delta doing, getting jobs to develop the Niger Delta? Why? Or in the process of? Why? It is for the Niger Delta. So everything about, okay, the Buhari's government has initiated the Northeast Development Fund. How many Niger Delta people are on the board of the Northeast Development Fund? But there is a northerner, as a matter of right, the North has a slot on the Niger Delta Development Commission. A lot of people don't know this, and if they do, they won't even discuss it. But how do you create Ministry of Niger Delta? At that time, I was saying it, that why would you create a Ministry of Niger Delta and leave it in Abuja? Then what is it ministry? And where is it ministering it? Then it is a ministry of federal government. It is not a ministry of Niger Delta, because you are still using the functionalities of federal character. And so everybody has a right to work in the Ministry of Niger Delta. No. Everybody should not have a right to work in the Ministry of Niger Delta. And if there are contracts to be awarded in agencies that has to do with Niger Delta, the option of first choice should go to the people of Niger Delta. If they're building road, do we have engineers that can qualify to build those roads? If we don't, can they partner with people that can do it? Because then the process of building the road will still benefit the workers in the Niger Delta. Today, I've been saying it now, we have a situation where one man is building the largest refinery in Africa, is building it in Lagos, and yet the oil is going to refine is going to come from Kula, from Soku, from Egi, from Eleme, from all these places. It's going to be difficult. Let people not say in 2-3 years time that Niger Delta people have come. No, we've been saying it now. If you want to use the oil in the Niger Delta and you want to refine it, and you're building a refinery in Lagos, you're creating jobs for people in Lagos. That job should be in the Niger Delta, where you're taking the raw material. The oil companies are in Lagos, and the excuse is that Niger Delta is insecure. But if Niger Delta is insecure for oil workers to be here, it must also be insecure for them to take the crude from here. You cannot be secure while taking the crude and be insecure for me to benefit from the crude that you have taken. So these are logical arguments and positions and demands. It is not selfish, and even if it is selfish, if you're not selfish, you cannot love yourself. You have to love yourself. And you have to demand things for yourselves. So these are the things that Niger Delta people must calm down and discuss in a calm way amongst themselves. The most critical aspect of the injustice Niger Delta people suffer It's the foolishness we have of not uniting to work together. I see no reason why the Shekiri man and the Ijaw man is fighting. The Urobo man and Shekiri man, the Ikwere man and Ogoni man. Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Hello, yes, good morning. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling. My name is John. I'm calling from Liverpool.
Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, I like your program. I like the struggle for Niger Delta.
Thank you.
I have some comments to make
Go
about
ahead.
the refinery.
Yeah.
That to take in a letter.
Go ahead.
You know, as a businessman, you know, personally speaking, I live in Niger Delta. I live in Port Harcourt. But it is practically hard for me to travel from Port Harcourt to Owerri. Okay, let me say, yes, Port Harcourt to Owerri, passing through LMS. The feeling of the feeling of insecurity is so much.
I agree.
So much.
I agree.
Now, talking about the business part of it, as a businessman, I tell you, I guarantee you, being from this place, being from this area, I cannot establish that kind of business in this area because of the level of insecurity in this place.
Yeah.
So I think the work of building this place rests in our hands.
Yes.
It rests in our hands.
I agree. I agree.
The mentality of the so-called government high chief.
Yes.
The mentality of the people itself.
Yes.
Right from the commonest person.
Yes.
The mentality is very bad.
I agree.
I really think we cannot sustain this cry for Niger Delta struggle. I mean, can we continue crying for Niger Delta sovereignty until we die?
Yes.
We are extending to because I don't see it happening. As an investor, being a person from Niger Delta, I cannot build a business here because it is not safe.
I agree. My brother, I totally agree with you, and that's why just before you called, I was making a point, which I was saying that we have to sit down. That is, Niger Delta people have to sit down and agree on what is going to work for us. For instance, the southwest, the southeast, and the middle belt. I just noticed. It's not that I just noticed. It's been obvious to me for a very long time that Niger Delta people are completely out of the loop of the way forward. We have no way forward. We have no agenda. I must say this publicly because it's one thing to be pointing out what is wrong and unacceptable. It is another thing for us now to sit down and find a solution. And the only way we can find the solution is this thing that you are saying and I am saying. And that's the next stage of the discussion that we must go into as a people, which is that we must clean up our houses. When you say that you are not that there is insecurity, there is no argument. If I say that there is argument about that, I will be lying, and I'm not somebody. I speak the truth. And so when you make this statement, I agree with you, but we must find the solution is within us, and we have the capacity to find it. And the first way of finding it is by looking inwards and starting with our children, with our youths. The youths are completely out of the loop. They are completely lost. They are so lost that they have become insensitive. They are wicked. They have been born into so much pain that they don't even see the pain they are inflicting on other people. We have to capture that. We must touch that. It's like so we have to tell ourselves the truth. I totally agree. And, go ahead. Go ahead.
For us to actually achieve this, that would say the businessman, he needs to establish the business now.
Yes.
And there is high instability in this region.
Yes.
And he has taken out a loan, a huge amount of loan that if they mention it here we just go there by hearing that. Now, do you expect somebody, a businessman, to establish that kind of business in that kind of place because he wants to do it now?
Okay, let me also tell you. Let me also point out one thing for you, which I believe anyway, but I could be wrong. I also blame our own people. We have Niger Delta people that are in oil and gas, even if it is at a very small level, that are in oil and gas, and are satisfied also to be operating from outside of the Niger Delta because of the insecurity. I also find them that they also must begin to be part of the process to work with both the people and politicians in the Niger Delta to begin to find a solution. We cannot leave everything in the hands of politicians and politics. I definitely will come back to this discussion of how we begin to look inward. I wasn't going to do it next week or the week after, but we are in the process of packaging the discussion. But because it has been raised, I believe that we will address it in the next outing and stuff. How do we now begin to solve the problem of insecurity in the Niger Delta as Niger Delta people? Thank you very much for tuning in. I look forward to next week, and have a wonderful holiday. I'm not one of those people that will say happy anything, because it's not happy anything. Thank you very much. Bye.